with poverty and finances and the things that we deal with every day. We have a small window here to possibly build a new school. And we've all said it. Our community, our kids, our parents, our teachers deserve a new school. And it's exciting to think about a new school. Everything that this board decides is student-driven. We think about our students, we think about our staff. And I hope as we get, there's no easy decisions, and we want to find a piece of, we've gone far and wide to try to build in the central part of the city. It may not be possible. Let's don't let location keep us from, if we miss this window of opportunity because of we're arguing and not agreeing on location, we may not have this chance for a long time. And I just think that we deserve to give it our best shot, no matter where it is.
And I will add to that, and I've not seen the actual plan, but the best I can dive into the refinance that the city put this past meeting, 2043 would be the year that they had removed enough of their current debt to make enough room for us to build a $20 million. And I may be wrong on that.
It would be a little sooner than that.
Okay.
But it would be, going by a traditional financing model, right now, as everyone's aware, the city's pretty much at their, if you use a traditional financing model, as everyone's pretty much aware, the city's right now at its debt capacity. I would have to go back and I can find that information if you want, Dr. Perigin, so you'll have it as a talking point. But, with the refinancing, you have that payment schedule. So you could look, and depending if it's a $25 million building, you can see at what point we would have that much debt capacity, which would in turn put us right back to where we are today in terms of finances. So I think this model that they talked about and mentioned to council, and see this as an opportunity and kind of an innovative way to make something happen that we know if you have to go a traditional route, it's probably a generation away.
Think about that.
Yeah, and this, that is, I think our board really understands that we're just not making a 2018 decision. Our board is making a generational decision. The decision that this board makes will impact the city of Bristol. It'll impact not just your children, but your grandchildren, and maybe for some of us, our great-grandchildren. And so we understand that, and I say we, I'm talking about this board. And so, we could, by law, we only have to have one public hearing, only one. And they've decided to have 4. And so I think that shows their heart as we're going through this process. We have to make a decision with our mind, but their heart wants to hear from our city.
Just a question about your process. What is your timetable?
So our hope is that we, by the end of this fiscal year or this summer, that we've got all the paperwork done, and then by late summer, early fall, we'll be moving dirt at one of those 5 sites.
Does that mean decisions be made?
Well, the decisions would have to. Oh yeah, absolutely. So we will have to make the decision to consolidate and choose a site, possibly at our February meeting. Then at that point, we anticipate that we could get an unsolicited bid. That opens up another process that could go up to 45 days where we get other bid. We've looked at that timetable, and for us to get this school online for school year 2021, we're nearing the point that we have to start making our first decision.
And with that being said, there's still not it's not like we've got our minds made up what we're going to do and where we're going to do it, even though it may look like it that Van Pelt may be the best site. That's not true. That has not been made up. And with that being said, also with the pre-K 2 and 3-5 intermediate, that decision has not been made either. So I just don't want anybody to go out of here thinking that our minds have already been made up, because those are basically still ideas. I mean, even though it may look like we're on a deadline for those ideas to come to fruition, they're still ideas, and that's why we're going to different schools to get your feedback, and hopefully we can come up with a decision one way or the other.
I have a unique job. As my job is to come up with ideas and make recommendations, and that's. I mean, I think if you hear my presentation, it's pretty clear. My recommendation, if I have to make it today, Van Pelt's the site. That's my job as superintendent. It's the board's job to make the final decision of whether that recommendation is any good or not. And so and they're going to take information from me, information from the public, and use that information to make a decision.
And I would say, I would add, I guess the one time I cringed during his presentation is when he says by law we have to have a public hearing. That's not why we're here. That is not. When we start talking about this, I said we got to do our public hearings in January. I had no idea there was a law about having public hearings. I'll just tell you up front, we're doing a public hearing so that you know what's going on, and we want to hear your concerns, and so that we can make an informed decision. As far as timeline goes, our last hearing is tomorrow night. We've been at every school, and given every school an opportunity to share their concerns, and each one has been different. I'll just tell you, each one has been different, and that's kind of what we expected. Everyone doesn't have the same concerns at each building. Van Pelt, their concern wasn't about loss of jobs or moving to a new building. They're not moving. It was more about traffic in their community. In the park. That was their concern. At Highland View, it was more about jobs. What are we going to do with this building, and what about the jobs? What about the teacher loss? How's that going to be absorbed? And then tonight's has been totally different as well. And I appreciate everyone's input. But with that being said, we've had the 4 hearings, and our first hard decision that we're going to try to make as a board is going to be in February, our first February board meeting. We got to decide on the property. If the bids are going to start coming in, they got to know where they're designing and what kind of money they're going to have in infrastructure, grading, that type stuff, to come up with a bid. I mean, I don't do that. That's not my work. I'm a mechanic. But if I'm going to build something, I'd like to know where it's at, so I can, if I'm going to put my name in the hat to be able to get that contract, I want to give you the best accurate number I can, knowing what the property is. So, with that being said, our February meeting, we're going to try to decide on the property. That's going to be our first step.
Have you? Are you letting the class structure, the instruction method, influence how you might go about selecting and building? Ronald, I thought, made a comment, and I caught. He mentioned team teaching, and which would probably go along with a one school, primary, intermediate, where all the grades are in one location. One reason I kind of caught that concept, my daughter teaches 5th grade in Chesterfield, Missouri, at a 5th grade school that they built a new school just for 5th grade. Brought all the 5th graders there, and I've heard her mention the concept of they're using team teaching. So that kind of caught my...
Mr. Cameron, don't dare let me speak for you, especially if I'm wrong. But I think Mr. Cameron was talking about the ability to collaborate. At Washington Lee, we have 2 1st grade teachers. At Highland View, we have 2 1st grade teachers. And at Stonewall Jackson, we have 2 1st grade teachers. Whatever the model is, whether it's intermediate primary or 2 new pre-K through 5 schools, our teachers will have more ability to collaborate with other teachers who are teaching the same things. Is that okay? So, we do a lot of team teaching already. We have all kinds of different instructional models, but I think what Mr. Cameron was talking about was the ability to collaborate.
Well, just having all your resources and all your mind, it's something to think about as we've looked at the different models, and Dr. Perigin said every school system has one of these models, and they've all been successful. They've all had challenges to overcome, but just, if we end up with that, the benefits are there to have all your staff and all your training and all your resources in one location rather than 3 or 4. So I think that's a big win. If that's what it ends up, I think it'll help us.
Well, one thing I might add, something I didn't know till I came on the board, is there's classroom reduction funding for the area that we live in, depending on where the school's at, the poverty level. That classroom has to be a certain size to get the most amount of funding we can get for that classroom. And the first few years I was on the board, we were hiring teachers in October to make, say, a third grade at Stonewall, so that we can get the funding at that school, which helped pay for that teacher, but to keep those classroom levels at the number they needed to be. That didn't necessarily ride up with the next grade level. So, that teacher was there for, maybe 9 months and with no guarantee of coming back for the next year. If we would have had a 2-school model, no matter how it was set up, if we'd had a 2-school model, you can adjust those numbers more fairly without having to make that higher.
And so that is why that we had 2 different numbers. For K through 3, we said 1:18 student-teacher ratios. That's because of the K3 class size reduction dollars. The way our free and reduced rate is and the number of students that we have to keep our K through 3 numbers at 1:18 in order to get additional funding from the state. We don't get that same money in 4 through 5, which is why we chose the 1:20 ratio in our 4th and 5th grade classrooms. I will also say, going back to the instructional model, which is seems to be the hot topic right now, there's some new data out that as a high school principal I'm having to dig into to understand. So a new report came out, and it shows every single school locality in the nation, and it shows the growth between 3rd grade and 8th grade in reading. And Bristol is doing really well in growth from their 3rd grade reading scores to their 8th grade reading scores. The problem is that we're starting out a little bit lower than a lot of what our neighbors are. And so you primary teachers will be excited to know that there's probably going to be more focus on our primary grades in the near future, because if we can bring their reading scores up to 3rd grade, we already know that from 3rd to 8th grade, we got some of the highest scores around in that growth. So if we can bring those lower grades up to start higher, then we'll get them up even higher as their 8th graders. But anyway, you'll get me off topic. I'll get myself off topic.
I'd just like to add one more thing. Bristol, Virginia has been financially strained, and therefore the citizens have been financially strained. I got my property tax bill in December, and I about fell out of my chair. So anything we can do to keep this budget neutral, like Dr. Perigin says, I think we owe that to our citizens. I don't think our citizens need any more financial strain, and if we can do this to not affect the citizens in their pocketbooks, I think it's the right thing to do.
Twitter questions, Ms. Jones? Okay.
Anybody have anything else? Any other comments?
Would it still be considered a Title I school? I mean, we'll still receive like the free breakfast for the students and lunch?
A real interesting phenomenon is that we will actually get more money for community eligibility from the community eligibility provision from consolidating, And we've tried to look at every single program and how that this consolidation will impact it. And that was one of the concerns that we had is would we lose CEP money by doing the consolidation? And it's not a lot, but at about $12,000 annually, we would get an additional CEP money.